The Baldwin County Public School System, considered one of the finest educational environments in the entire state of Alabama, has a history beginning in the latter part of the 18th century, when, as records indicate, Alabama's first public schoolhouse was built in the North Baldwin County community of Tensas in 1799. At that time, nearly 10 years prior to Baldwin being organized as a county, the area remained geographically expanse. Agriculture served as king, and family farms dotted every section of the county. However, in this era of extremely limited highway systems, individual communities built their own respective public schoolhouses, with the Board of Education supplying teachers to provide instruction. In the early part of the 20th century, the Baldwin County Public School System boasted over 80 separate school districts, each with their own individual public schoolhouse. As time progressed, marked with improvements in transportation and engineering, numerous school districts were consolidated into nearby areas, leaving us today with very few of the original public schoolhouses which distinguished, beginning in 1799, Baldwin County as the birthplace of Alabama's first public schoolhouse. This documentary, commissioned by the Honorable County Commissioners of Baldwin County and honorable members of the Baldwin County Board of Education, seeks to illuminate these few remaining and historic original public schoolhouses in an effort to pay tribute to one of the finest public school systems in Alabama.
Silverhill was founded in 1896 by the Sve Land Company. Oscar Johnson was one of the founders, and he built the first buildings in Silverhill, starting with his house. And the children that were with him and the other families needed a school to go to, so they began in Oscar Johnson's barn. And they attended school there for a short while until he had the land company office built. And then they started going to school in the land company office for about 7 years until they outgrew it. So while they were attending school and deciding to build a new building in this house, where this house is now, they attended school for a short while at the Baptist Sanctuary building. And then in 1905, they moved into this school building, which was a 2-story building, and it had a big room downstairs and a big room upstairs. The children went to school here until 1928, when the new school was built across the street. It was a big brick building, a 1-story brick building. And at the time that the school was transferred over there in 1928, the children in the Czech community also came and joined them. So it was the Swedish community and the Czech community joined together to go to school. And that school continued until 1955, when it accidentally caught fire and burned down. And the next year, in 1956, the present-day school building in Silverhill was built. And it's continued to grow until this day. It's been added onto ever since. The records that I have read seem to indicate that the school was a 2-story, 2-room schoolhouse. And to begin with, it was only taught by one teacher. And then they included another teacher, I believe in 1907. They started with 2 teachers. And the building itself was built on the property owned by the town. It was the Swedish community that donated the property for the building. And the community itself got together and built the building with their own money. And the records show that the cost for the building materials was $552. In 1928, when the school moved from this building to the building next door, that was the brick building, the children that were living out in the rural areas that were brought into town to attend school needed a way to come in. And so there were no school buses at the time, but a man in Silverhill named Dave Forsman took an old truck and converted it into a school bus for the children to ride to school in. And from what I understand, it was just an old truck that probably had wooden benches placed on the side for the children to ride in, and it may have been an open truck, as far as I understand, that the children had to ride in to school every day.
I have heard the story that Silverhill was named because a sawmill operator paid off his hands in silver dollars, and he did this because he wanted it known that the money that was circulating around in that area was because of his presence there. The Silverhill School, as I know it, was many buildings. Their schools have been in many buildings in and about that area. They've had school in their churches, and the churches have become schools, and schools have become churches. And it was the Silverhill School that I knew originally was a standard school, built just like Loxley, but it burned in the 50s. I saw the fire. I was going home one Saturday about noon, and I saw this terrible smoke over to the east, and I drove over there and watched the school burn. It was rebuilt as one of our elongated rectangular boxes with a series of rooms, and then we brought in other buildings to make up for the lack of it. Among the more interesting buildings that we brought in was the Little Bohemian Hall. The big Bohemian Hall was known as the PZK. It's located within Robertsdale city limits. But this particular building was in a community of Czech residents that lived to the south and a bit to the west, about 2.5 miles away. And it was quite a feat to bring that building into the campus. You had to bring it across a field in the back of it. We did this at a time when we were so desperate for classrooms for all of the new programs that the state gave us. The state at one time in the late 80s reduced the pupil-teacher ratio by a significant amount and gave us nothing to build buildings with. They put in a kindergarten program, provided nothing. All these new federal programs that we got for exceptional children, where we needed classrooms for classes for exceptional teachers, no money whatsoever for that. So we, at one time, used every crack and cranny that we could find. We used hallways. We chopped up our auditoriums, divided them into classrooms. We gave up assistant principals' offices. We gave up libraries. We were absolutely desperate for classrooms. And we reached out into these old communities where we had abandoned schools. And we brought them in to the areas where we needed them and refurbished them. This was something that we could do with our own labor. We didn't have funds to construct new buildings, but we did have funds for some labor, and we were able to bring these buildings. We didn't move them ourselves. We contracted that. But once they got on the new campus and sat down, then we put them back together and used them for our purposes, and they served us as well, and maybe better in their new capacity than they had in their original capacity. I could name a dozen different areas from which we got them, but one of them was this, this little Bohemian hall that the community made available to us if we wanted to move it. And it provided us with several specialized classrooms. It has, I understand it's been moved in later years, and new construction has been put in its place. But it served the Silverhill community in so many different ways. And one of them was as classrooms for its pupils. I remember Silverhill as being a community that was so strongly supportive of its schools. Its schools were just an integral part of the community. Silverhill is a community of ethnic groups. Czechoslovakia is represented, Sweden is represented. There's English representation, there's German representation in the area. It is diverse in its ethnic richness. PTA Founders Day was their big school community event, and people from all over Baldwin County went. The local residents provided the entertainment. People of all ages, and when I say all ages, I mean up into the 80s and 90s, did the singing and the dancing and the presentation of the old ethnic traditions with in their song and dance. Founders Day was a big event. It was always at night, and people went from all over Baldwin County.
Well, I started school here in 1927, and we had to walk to school, which wasn't about half a mile or 3/4 of a mile. Hardly ever wore shoes. And one day it was in the winter time, and I didn't have my shoes, and there was ice on the ground, and I came to school, and my mother sent my sister with my shoes, and I felt so embarrassed. I didn't want to face anybody. So, but I put them on. I was kind of glad to get them because it was really cold. I only went to school here for about half a year, I guess, before we went over to the new school. But I remember some of the things, and there was a mulberry tree right on the back, as we went out of the back of the house. And this lady, which was a little older than me, she wasn't a lady, she was a girl. She jumped off the porch and swung on the mulberry tree and fell off and broke her arm. But I don't remember too much more about going to school right here, but then we went across the road and went to school over there. That's when they built the new school then. Well, the school started in the library, the Oscar Johnson Memorial Library, which is now. And then it got bigger, and then the founding fathers, I guess, built this school here. And so all the students just transferred over here. Of course, there's not many of us left anymore. And, but I still have some acquaintances, some friends that I still knew that came to school here. There was a man on the other side of the river, a boy now, he was a boy then, of course, and he should have gone to school here. But they didn't have any way to get across the river, so he had to go to school in Fairhope. But after the bridge was built, then he came to school here. And after 8th grade, then he went on back to Fairhope and graduated from Fairhope. But I remember talking to him, I was in the 7th grade then, and he says, when you get home, you're going to have a little brother or sister. I didn't know what he's talking about, you know. And sure enough, I came home and I had a little sister. I couldn't believe it, you know. But his mother was a midwife, so he knew all the ins and outs about the babies. She delivered all the babies around here. She delivered my wife, which lived in the old hotel over here. And then they bought a house right back on the other side of this house, which the school wasn't here anymore. My father bought the place when I was in the Navy and built the house here. And then Debbie and Phil bought the house, and it's not the same place anymore. It's altogether different, yeah. The first school in Silverhill that I remember was, and I don't remember it really, but I was told it because I wasn't here then, was in the Silverhill Library. It's a memorial library, and that was really the main building in town, and all the business taken care of there. And then when they built this building, then all the students came over here to go to school. After the school was vacant, they had a big room here, and people held meetings here. We had our scout meetings here too. Albert Phillips was a scoutmaster, and I don't remember, we didn't do nothing but fool around. He didn't have too much discipline, and we used to have boxing matches and hit each other and everything like that. Had to pay a nickel a week to come to scout meetings, and but actually the building was about the same, and of course we didn't have indoor restrooms like some of the schools have now, I guess. But we just had a wooden outbuilding there, and we'd have to go into there and bang on the door if somebody was in there. Usually it wasn't too much privacy. And that was about it for the school here that I can remember.
During the 1903-04 school year, the growth in the student population led once again to expansion efforts. While the two-story, two-room building was under construction, class was held in the Baptist church. The new schoolhouse, completed in 1905, was built with donated labor, with the Sve Land Company providing $552 for lumber and materials. The building, which served as the community school for 23 years, remains a part of the Silverhill landscape as it sits across from the present-day Silverhill campus